The throne room of Valora Prime was made of living crystal. It grew from the floor like frozen waves and caught the light of 3 suns that hung in the purple sky outside. Empress Una sat upon a seat that had been grown over 10,000 years, shaped by the will of her ancestors. She was beautiful in the way her people were beautiful. Her skin glowed with soft blue light. Her eyes were like liquid silver. Her voice could command fleets or calm storms. But today, the Empress was afraid. She would never show it. Her face remained calm as stone, while her advisors spoke in worried voices around her. But deep inside, in the place where she kept her truest thoughts, Una felt something she had not felt in 300 cycles of rule. Fear. The reports were getting worse every day. The creature they called the Maw had destroyed another settlement. 2,000 Valorans dead. Not killed in battle. Not defeated by some enemy force. Simply eaten. Swallowed by a thing that should not exist. The Maw had crawled out of the Void Rifts 6 months ago. Nobody knew what the Void Rifts really were. Some said they were tears in reality itself. Others said they were doorways to dimensions where the laws of nature did not apply. Whatever they were, they had released something terrible into the galaxy. The creature was massive. 30 meters of black scales that ate light instead of reflecting it. Dozens of eyes that glowed like dying stars. A mouth that seemed too large for its body, filled with teeth that could bite through starship armor. And worst of all, it could not be killed. The Valoran fleet had tried everything. Energy weapons passed through its body like light through smoke. Missiles exploded against its hide and did nothing. They had dropped nuclear fire on it, enough to crack a moon, and the Maw had simply walked out of the flames and kept eating. It regenerated. Any wound healed within minutes. Any damage was undone. It was as if the universe itself refused to let this thing die. Admiral Junho stood before the Empress, his 4 arms clasped behind his back. He was old for a Valoran, nearly 800 cycles, and he had never lost a battle until now. "We have lost contact with Veth Colony," he said. His voice was steady, but his glow had dimmed. That was how Valorans showed stress. Their light faded when they were troubled. The Maw has taken the entire planet. 40 million citizens, Empress. Gone. Una closed her eyes. 40 million. Added to the others, that made nearly 100 million of her people dead. 100 million souls fed to a monster she could not stop. What options remain? She asked. Few, Majesty. Junho pulled up a holographic display. It showed the Maw's path of destruction across the sector. We could evacuate the surrounding systems. Abandon this region of space entirely. Let the creature have it. And when it finishes eating those worlds, when it moves on to the next sector. And the next? Junho had no answer. The doors to the throne room opened. A guard entered and bowed low. Empress, the human delegation has arrived. They request an audience. Una almost laughed. Almost. The humans. Of all the species in the galaxy that come calling now, she knew about humans, of course. Everyone did. They were a young species, barely 1,000 years into space travel. They came from a small blue world on the edge of the galaxy. A place called Earth. The Valoran scientists had studied them with great interest because they should not exist. Earth was what the galaxy called a death world. Everything on that planet seemed designed to kill its inhabitants. The weather alone was insane. Freezing cold, burning heat, storms that could flatten cities, waves that could swallow coastlines. The animals were worse. Predators with sharp teeth and claws. Venomous insects. Creatures in the ocean that could crush bone with their jaws. And yet humans had survived. Not just survived, but thrived. They had climbed to the top of their food chain and then left their planet to explore the stars. It was impressive in its way, Una supposed. Like watching a small, soft creature somehow defeat a much larger one through sheer stubbornness. But what could humans possibly offer now? They had no great fleets, no reality-bending weapons. They were fragile things made of water and meat, so easily broken. Still, she was desperate enough to hear anyone. Send them in, she said. The human delegation was small. Just 3 of them, wearing simple gray uniforms. They walked without the natural grace of Valorans, their movements inefficient and clumsy. Their skin did not glow. Their eyes were dull colors like brown and black. They were so plain, so ordinary. The one in front was tall for a human. He had dark hair cut short and a face that showed the early signs of aging. Lines around his eyes, a tiredness in the way he held himself. His name, according to the records, was Taiho. He served as an ambassador for something called the United Earth Council. Empress Yuna, Taiho said, bowing his head slightly. Thank you for seeing us. You have come at a strange time, Ambassador, Yuna replied. My empire faces a crisis. I have little patience for diplomatic pleasantries. I know. That is why we are here. Taiho stepped forward. His dull brown eyes met her silver ones without flinching. We have heard about your problem. The creature you call the Maw. We would like to help. Silence fell over the throne room. Yuna stared at the human. Her advisors exchanged confused glances. Admiral Junho's glow flickered with something like disbelief. You, Yuna said slowly, wish to help us. With the Maw? Yes, Empress. The creature that has destroyed our most powerful weapons. That has eaten our finest warriors. That has killed 100 million of my people. She leaned forward on her throne. And you believe humans can succeed where the Valoran Dominion has failed? Taiho did not look away. We believe we can try. Something snapped inside Yuna. Perhaps it was the stress of months of failure. Perhaps it was the absurdity of this moment. Perhaps she simply needed to laugh at something before the weight of her fear crushed her completely. She laughed. It was a sound like crystal bells ringing in a storm, bright and sharp and not entirely kind. Very well, Ambassador. I will make you a deal. She spread her arms wide, gesturing to the crystal walls around them. You can have my entire planet if you subdue this predator. Her advisors gasped. Junho stepped forward to protest, but Yuna silenced them with a wave of her hand. It was a joke, after all. A bitter joke made in a dark moment. No human could possibly succeed. And then the man smiled. It was a small smile, just a slight curve of his lips. But something in that smile made Yuna's laughter die in her throat. Something in his dull brown eyes suddenly did not seem so dull anymore. We accept your terms, Taiho said. I will send for our specialist. He bowed again and turned to leave. At the door, he paused and looked back. Empress, my people have a saying. Never bet against a human who has nothing to lose. Then he was gone, and Yuna was left sitting on her ancient throne, wondering what she had just agreed to. Taiho returned to his ship and sat alone in the dark for a long time. The weight of what he had just done pressed down on him like a stone. He had made a promise to an alien empress. A promise that humanity could do the impossible. He pulled up his communication panel and typed a single message. It was short. Just a few words sent across the vast emptiness of space to a small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy. Category 7, Sendoyan. Then, he waited. The message would take hours to reach Earth. The response would take even longer. But Taiho knew it would come. It always did. When humanity faced something it could not explain, something it could not fight with guns or bombs or ships, there was one name that always came up. Do high-end. 3 standard days passed. The Maw continued its path of destruction. Another colony fell. Another million lives ended. Empress Yuna sent increasingly angry messages, demanding to know when this human specialist would arrive. Her tone made it clear she thought the whole thing was a waste of time. Taeho did not respond. He simply waited. On the third day, a ship dropped out of hyperspace. It was not what anyone expected. Valoran ships were elegant, their lines smooth and beautiful, their hulls made of the same living crystal as the Empress's throne. Human military vessels were blocky and practical, designed for function over form. This ship was neither. It was small, barely larger than a shuttle. Its hull was scarred with burns and dents from dozens of battles. Patches of different metals showed where repairs had been made over many years. It looked like a machine that had been dragged through hell and somehow kept flying. Valoran sensors could not even properly identify it. It did not match any known classification. When Admiral Junho tried to scan its weapon systems, the scan came back confused, as if the ship itself did not want to be understood. A single transmission came from the vessel. "This is Doyun. I am here for the hunt." Taeho smiled when he heard those words. He went to meet the ship as it landed in the main docking bay of the Valoran station. A small crowd had gathered. Soldiers, scientists, diplomats. They all wanted to see what kind of human would be foolish enough to challenge them all. The ship's door opened with a hiss of old hydraulics. A man stepped out. He was not impressive at first glance. He was old, perhaps 50 Earth years, though it was hard to tell with humans. Gray streaked through his dark hair. Deep lines marked his face, carved there by sun and wind and time. He moved slowly, carefully, like a man who had learned that rushing led to mistakes. But his eyes were something different. They were dark brown, almost black, and they seemed to see everything at once. They swept across the docking bay in a single glance, noting exits, counting people, measuring distances. They were the eyes of a predator wearing human skin. He wore simple clothes. Leather boots worn soft with use. Cloth pants with many pockets. A jacket that looked older than some Valoran buildings. Nothing about him suggested he was a warrior. No armor, no visible weapons, no badges or medals. He carried a bag. Just a simple bag made of rough fabric, slung over one shoulder. Taeho stepped forward and clasped the man's hand in the human way of greeting. "Doyun, thank you for coming. You said Category 7. Dohyun's voice was quiet, rough, like stones grinding together. "I have not had a Category 7 in 8 years. This one is special. They always are." Dohyun looked around at the watching Valorans. His eyes lingered on their glowing skin, their elegant features, their obvious discomfort at his presence. "These are the ones who lost? These are our hosts. The Valoran Dominion. The Maw is destroying their empire. HM." Dohyun shouldered his bag and began walking toward the station interior. "Take me to whoever is in charge. I have questions." Empress Yuna received him in her throne room. This time, she had arranged for maximum effect. Her elite guard stood along the walls, 50 of the deadliest warriors in the Dominion, each one capable of killing with a thought. The crystal walls glowed brighter than usual, designed to overwhelm and intimidate visitors. Dohyun did not seem to notice any of it. He walked into the center of the room and set down his bag. Then, without waiting for permission, he began to unpack. The Valorans watched in stunned silence as he laid out his tools. Coiled wire made of some dark metal. Glass containers of various sizes. Chunks of meat wrapped in paper. Several blades, ranging from small knives to a sword that looked like it had been made by hand. A worn journal filled with handwritten notes. And something that looked like a primitive projectile weapon, the kind humans had used before they discovered energy technology. "What?" Empress Yuna said, her voice cold as space. "Is the meaning of this?" Dohyun did not look up. He was examining one of his blades, running his thumb along the edge. "Tell me about the maw," he said. "Excuse me?" "The creature. Tell me about it. Everything you know. Feeding patterns, territory, how it moves, how it sleeps, what it avoids." Yuna's glow flared with anger. "Do you understand who you are speaking to? I am the Empress of the Valoran Dominion. I rule 1,000 worlds. You will address me with proper respect." Do-hyun finally looked up. His dark eyes met her silver ones. "Empress, I mean no disrespect, but I have a job to do, and I do not have time for politics. Your creature has killed 100 million people. It will kill more while we stand here talking about titles and manners." He returned to his blade. "So please, tell me about them all." The room was silent. No one had ever spoken to the Empress this way. Her guards tensed, ready to kill this insolent human at a single command. But Yuna did not give that command. Instead, she studied this strange man. This gray-haired human with his bag of primitive tools and his complete lack of fear. There was something about him that made her hesitate. Something that reminded her of the old stories her grandmother used to tell. Stories about hunters from the early days of her people, before they had ships and weapons and technology. Hunters who tracked their prey across frozen wastes with nothing but their will and their wits. "The maw avoids nothing," she said finally. "It fears nothing. Every weapon we have used against it has failed. Everything fears something." Do-hyun held up his blade to the light, checking its edge. "Your people just have not found it yet." He began packing his tools back into his bag with careful movements. "I will need transport to wherever the creature currently is. I will need access to your records on it. All sensor data, all footage, all reports." He stood and slung the bag over his shoulder. "And I will need everyone to stay out of my way. That is all?" Yuna asked. "No ships? No soldiers? No weapons?" Do-hyun patted his bag. "I have everything I need." He turned and walked toward the door. At the entrance, he paused and looked back, just as Taiho had done 3 days earlier. "Empress, I have spent my life hunting things that should not exist. Creatures that cannot be killed. Monsters that eat ships and swallow cities. I have faced them all, and I am still here." He smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "The maw is just another predator, and I know how to deal with predators." Then he was gone, leaving the Empress and her court to wonder what kind of human they had just invited into their war. The planet Veth 3 had once been beautiful. Green forests had covered its surface. Blue rivers had wound through valleys filled with flowers that sang when the wind blew. 40 million Valorans had called it home, building their crystal cities among the trees and hills. Now it was a graveyard. Do-hyun stood on a ridge overlooking what remained of the capital city. The buildings were shattered, their crystal walls broken into jagged pieces that caught the light like scattered jewels. The forests were burned. The rivers ran thick with ash. The singing flowers were silent forever. And somewhere in the ruins below, the maw waited. Do-hyun had arrived 3 hours ago. He had told the Valoran transport ship to leave him and not come back until he called. The pilot had thought he was insane. She had argued, pleaded, warned him that he would die alone on this dead world. He had smiled and told her that dying alone was how most hunters ended up. Then he had jumped out of the ship before she could argue further. Now he sat on the ridge, watching. That was all he did for the first day. He sat and watched. He noted how the shadows moved across the ruins as the sun crossed the sky. He listened to the sounds of the dead city, the creaking of broken buildings, the whistle of wind through empty streets. He smelled the air, thick with smoke and something else, something organic and wrong. When night fell, he did not sleep. He watched the darkness and waited for the maw to move. It did, around midnight. He heard it before he saw it. A deep rumbling sound, like thunder buried underground. Then the creature emerged from the largest ruin, a building that had once been a government center. Even from a distance, Do-hyun felt his heart beat faster. The maw was enormous. 30 meters of living nightmare, its body made of scales so black they seemed to drink the starlight. Dozens of eyes covered its head, each one glowing with a faint red light. Its mouth was closed now, but Do-hyun could see the outline of teeth behind its lips. Teeth as long as his arm. It moved through the ruins slowly, almost lazily. There was no hurry in its motions. Why would there be? Nothing on this world could threaten it. Nothing in this galaxy, as far as it knew. Do-hyun watched it hunt. The creature sniffed the air, its many eyes scanning the darkness. It was looking for something. Food, perhaps. Or just something to destroy. After a few minutes, it found a collapsed building and began to dig. Its claws tore through crystal and stone like paper. It found something buried there. Do-hyun could not see what, but the creature ate it quickly, its mouth opening to reveal rows and rows of those terrible teeth. He noted everything in his journal. Time of activity, direction of movement, speed, how it used its senses, how it reacted to sounds and smells. The second day was the same, and the third, and the fourth. Do-hyun did not attack. He did not reveal himself. He simply watched. On the fifth day, the Valoran observers arrived. Empress Yuna had sent a team to monitor the humans' progress. They were led by a young officer named Miri, a female Valoran with bright blue skin and a sharp mind. She had been chosen because she was considered expendable. No one expected this mission to succeed. She found Do-hyun sitting in the ruins of a small house, eating dried meat from his bag. "You have been here 5 days," Miri said, her voice tight with frustration. "What are you doing? Watching? Watching? Our people are dying across the sector, and you are watching?" Do-hyun offered her some of his food. She refused. "Do you know what a wolf is?" he asked. "No. It is a predator from Earth, 4 legs, sharp teeth, very dangerous. My ancestors hunted them for thousands of years." He chewed slowly, thinking. When you hunt a wolf, you do not chase it. You do not try to outrun it or outfight it. You learn it. You learn where it sleeps, where it drinks, where it hunts. You learn its fears and its habits. You become an expert on that wolf, and only that wolf. And then? Then you use what you have learned against it. Miri shook her head. The maw is not a wolf. It is a monster. It cannot be learned. It can only be destroyed. Everything can be learned. Do-hyun pointed toward the ruins where the maw currently rested. I have been watching that creature for 5 days. I have learned many things. Such as? It is wounded. Miri froze. What? There is an old injury on its left side. The scales there are slightly different, newer than the rest. It healed, but not perfectly. When it turns, it favors its right. When it attacks, it protects its left. Do-hyun smiled. Your weapons could not find this weakness because you were too busy trying to kill it. You never stopped to look. What else? It does not like enclosed spaces. When it goes into buildings, it only stays for a few minutes before leaving. Claustrophobic, maybe. Or perhaps something in its past taught it to fear being trapped. He pulled out his journal and flipped through pages of notes. It avoids water. There is a river on the east side of the city, and the maw has never crossed it. Not once in 5 days. Miri was staring at him now with something new in her silver eyes. Not quite respect, but close. You learned all this by watching? Watching is the most important part of the hunt. Any fool can attack. But to truly defeat a predator, you must understand it first. That night, Do-hyun moved closer to the maw's territory. He set up camp in a building the creature had already searched, knowing it would not return to the same place twice. Another pattern he had noticed. Mira, he stayed with him. She told herself it was to observe, to report back to the Empress. But the truth was simpler. She was curious. This strange human with his primitive tools and his quiet patience was unlike anything she had ever seen. "How did you become a hunter?" she asked as they sat in the darkness. Do-hyun was silent for a long time. "On Earth," he said finally, "we have many dangerous creatures. But the most dangerous of all is man himself. We nearly destroyed our own world with our wars and our greed. When we finally reached the stars, we found that the universe was full of things even more dangerous than us. So you hunt them? Someone has to." He looked out at the darkness where the mall waited. Most species run from predators. They build walls and weapons and try to hide. But humans learned a different way. We learned to chase the things that scared us, to follow them until we understood them, to become something they had never seen before. "And what is that?" Do-hyun's eyes glinted in the darkness. "A predator that never stops, never rests, never gives up. A predator that will chase you across mountains and rivers and years until you are too tired to run anymore." He smiled, and there was something ancient in that smile. "That is what humans are, Mira. We are the monsters that other monsters have nightmares about." The next morning, Do-hyun began to prepare. He sharpened his blades. He tested his wire. He mixed something in one of his glass containers, a liquid that glowed faintly green. Mira asked what it was. "Fire," he said. "A kind of fire that does not stop burning until I tell it to. I made it from plants I found in the forest. Your creature can regenerate almost anything, but it cannot regenerate if the wound keeps burning. You are going to fight it?" Do-hyun looked up at her. His eyes were calm and clear. "No, I am going to teach it." "Teach it what?" "That there is something in this universe more stubborn than it is." He finished his preparations and stood. The sun was rising over the ruined city, painting the broken crystals in shades of gold and red. "Stay here," he told Mira. "No matter what you see, no matter what you hear, do not interfere." Then he walked down into the ruins alone, toward the place where the mall waited, and the hunt began. Do-hyun walked through the ruins of the capital city with slow, measured steps. He did not try to hide. He did not look for cover or plan escape routes. He simply walked, as if he was taking a morning stroll through a park, instead of entering the territory of the deadliest creature in the galaxy. His bag hung from one shoulder. His blade rested in his right hand. The container of chemical fire was strapped to his belt. Around him, the city was silent. No birds sang. No insects buzzed. Everything that could flee had fled long ago. Everything that could not have been eaten died. He reached the center of the ruins and stopped. This was where the mall spent most of its time. This was where it felt safe. Do-hyun sat down on a piece of broken crystal and waited. 1 hour passed. Then 2. The sun climbed higher in the sky, casting harsh shadows across the destruction. Sweat ran down Do-hyun's face, but he did not move. He did not fidget or shift or show any sign of impatience. He had done this before, many times. Waiting was the hardest part of the hunt, but also the most important. Predators could sense fear. They could smell nervousness. If you wanted to face one without becoming food, you had to empty yourself of everything but calm. The ground trembled. Do-hyun felt it before he heard it. A deep vibration that ran through the broken stones beneath him. Then came a sound, that terrible rumbling he had heard from the ridge. Like thunder that had learned to walk, the mall emerged from a collapsed building 300 meters away. It was even more terrifying up close. Its black scales seemed to absorb the sunlight, creating a shape of pure darkness against the bright sky. Its eyes, all 47 of them, swiveled to focus on the small creature sitting in the middle of its territory. For a long moment, Nothing happened. The maw had never seen anything like this. Every other creature ran when it appeared. Every machine attacked. But this small soft thing just sat there, looking at it with dark, steady eyes. It was confused. And for a predator, confusion was dangerous. The creature moved closer, its massive body crushing rubble beneath its claws. Each step shook the ground. Each breath sent waves of hot air across the ruins. It stopped 20 meters from Do-yoon and lowered its head, bringing those dozens of glowing eyes close enough to study him. Do-yoon did not move. He barely breathed. He met the creature's gaze and held it. Minutes passed like hours. Then, slowly, the maw opened its mouth. Those terrible teeth gleamed in the sunlight. A sound came from deep in its throat. A rumbling growl that Do-hyun felt in his bones. It was a warning. A final chance to run. Do-hyun stood up. The maw lunged. It moved faster than something that size should be able to move. Its jaws snapping shut on the space where Do-hyun had been sitting. Crystal and stone shattered beneath its bite. But Do-hyun was not there anymore. He had rolled to the left, not away from the creature, but toward it, toward the weak point on its left flank. His blade was already moving, drawing a line of black blood across the newer scales where the old wound had healed. The maw screamed. It was not a sound of pain. Its regeneration was already working, flesh knitting back together almost as fast as it was cut. This was a sound of surprise, of anger. Something had hurt it. Something small and soft and supposedly helpless had dared to draw its blood. It spun, tail sweeping through the air like a whip. Do-hyun ducked under it and cut again, another slash across the same spot. This time, he followed the blade with fire, opening the container in his belt and splashing the chemical mixture into the wound. The fire caught. It was not like normal fire. It burned green and bright, and it did not stop. The maw's regeneration tried to heal around it, but the chemical kept eating through new flesh as fast as it formed. The creature screamed again, and this time there was pain in the sound. It attacked wildly, thrashing and biting and clawing at everything around it. Buildings collapsed. The ground cracked. Do-hyun was thrown through the air and crashed into a pile of rubble. He felt ribs break. Blood filled his mouth, but he got up. That was what humans did. They got up. No matter how many times they were knocked down, they got up again. Do-hyun pulled out his wire. A length of dark metal waited at both ends. The maw was distracted by the fire in its side, shaking its head and roaring at the pain it could not escape. It did not see him circle around behind it. He threw the wire with practiced precision. It wrapped around one of the creature's sensory stalks, the long tendrils that grew from its head and helped it navigate in the dark. He pulled tight. The maw went wild. It could not see. It could not sense. One of its most important organs was being crushed by something it could not reach, could not bite, could not destroy. Do-hyun held on. The creature dragged him across the ruins. It rolled and thrashed and screamed. It smashed into buildings, trying to crush him against the walls. Blood ran down his arms from where the wire cut into his hands. His vision blurred. His muscles screamed for rest. He did not let go. This was what his ancestors had done on Earth, thousands of years ago. They had not been the fastest hunters, not the strongest, but they had been the most stubborn. They had chased their prey across endless plains, never stopping, never resting, until the prey was too exhausted to run any more. Hours passed. The sun moved across the sky. The green fire continued to burn in the maw's side, preventing it from healing. The wire continued to crush its sensory stalk, blinding it to half the world. And Do-hyun continued to hold on, continued to follow, continued to be exactly where the creature did not want him to be. The maw began to slow. Not much at first. Just a slight heaviness in its movements. A moment of pause between attacks. But Do-hyun noticed. He noticed everything. He cut it again. Another slash across the weak point. More fire poured into the wound. The creature howled and ran. Actually ran, like prey fleeing from something it feared. It crashed through the ruins toward the river, toward the water it had always avoided. But when it reached the bank, it stopped. Do-hyun understood then. Water. The creature was afraid of water. Something in its past, something in its strange existence, had taught it that water meant death. He pressed forward, blade in hand, forcing the maw closer to the edge. The creature turned to face him. Its many eyes were different now. The red glow had faded. Something else was there. Something Do-hyun had seen before in the eyes of wolves and lions and bears, when they finally understood that they were not the hunter anymore. Fear. Good, Do-hyun said quietly. His voice was raw. His body was broken. But his eyes were steady. Now you understand. The maw made a sound. Not a roar. Not a growl. Something softer. Something almost like a question. Do-hyun lowered his blade. I am not going to kill you, he said. I could not kill you even if I wanted to. You are too strong. Too old. Too stubborn. He smiled through bloody teeth. Like me. He took a step forward. Then another. The maw did not attack. It watched him approach with those dozens of fearful eyes. Do-hyun reached out his hand. But you need to understand something. This galaxy is not yours to destroy. These people are not yours to eat. There is something here that will fight back. That will chase you across stars and through years. That will never, ever give up. His hand touched the creature's massive head. Me. The maw shuddered. A long, low sound came from its throat. Not anger. Not pain. Submission. And on a ridge overlooking the ruins, watching through a long-range scope, ManHFY witnessed the impossible. A single human, broken and bleeding, standing with his hand on the head of a creature that had destroyed empires. She did not know what to report to the Empress. She was not sure she believed what her own eyes had seen, but she knew one thing for certain. She would never look at humans the same way again. The battle had lasted 7 hours. Do-hyun stood in the ruins of the capital city, his hand still resting on the maw's massive head. His body was broken in a dozen different ways. 3 ribs cracked. Left arm dislocated. Cuts and bruises covered every part of him. Blood had soaked through his clothes and dried in dark stains. He should be dead. Any Valoran would be dead. Any normal human would be dead. But Do-hyun was not normal. He had been doing this for 30 years, hunting things that could not be hunted, facing creatures that could not be faced. His body had learned to survive damage that should kill him. His mind had learned to push through pain that should cripple him. The maw lay still beneath his touch. Not dead. Not even truly wounded anymore. The green fire had finally burned itself out, and the creature's regeneration had sealed the wounds. But something had changed in those dozens of red eyes. The creature understood now. It understood that this small soft thing was not prey. Not food. Not something to be ignored or crushed. This was an equal. A rival. Something to be respected. Do-hyun stroked the creature's scales gently, the way he had stroked the wolves and lions and bears of Earth after they had learned to respect him. Good, he said softly. You did well. You fought hard. But now you know. There are some things in this universe you cannot eat. The maw made a sound, low and rumbling, almost like a purr. ManHFY came running down from the ridge, her silver eyes wide with shock. Behind her, the rest of the observation team followed, their glowing skin flickering with emotions they could not process. That is impossible, ManHFY breathed. What you did is impossible. Apparently not. Do-hyun finally removed his hand from the creature's head and turned to face her. He was smiling despite the pain. Do you have medical supplies? I think I need some attention." The next few days were chaos. News of what happened spread across the Dominion like wildfire. The creature that had killed 100 million people, that had destroyed entire fleets, that had been considered an unstoppable force of nature, had been subdued by a single human with a bag of primitive tools. At first, no one believed it. How could they? It went against everything the Valorans understood about power and strength in war. But the evidence was undeniable. The footage from the observation team showed everything. Do-hyun's patient study of the creature, his careful preparation, the 7-hour battle in the ruins, and finally, impossibly, the moment of submission. The Valoran scientists wanted to study him. They wanted to understand how a human body could survive such punishment, how a human mind could remain calm in the face of certain death. They took samples of his blood, scanned his brain, measured his heartbeat. They found nothing special. He was just human. Fragile, short-lived, ordinary human. That made it even more terrifying. On the 7th day after the hunt, Do-hyun was summoned to Valora Prime. He walked into the Empress's throne room the same way he had walked in before. Calm and unhurried, his bag over his shoulder. But everything was different now. The elite guard who had once looked at him with contempt now watched him with wary respect. The advisors who had dismissed him now stepped aside to let him pass. And behind him, filling the massive doorway, came the maw. The creature moved slowly, carefully, like a dog following its master. Its eyes no longer glowed with that hungry red light. They were calmer now, almost peaceful. It stopped at the entrance to the throne room, too large to fit inside, and waited. Empress Yuna rose from her crystal throne. She looked different than she had before. The cold confidence was gone. In its place was something more complicated, a mixture of awe and confusion, and perhaps a little fear. "You actually did it," she said. "I gave you an impossible task as a joke, and you actually did it." Do-hyun bowed his head slightly. "The maw will not attack your worlds anymore. It has learned that there are consequences to such actions. It understands now. How? How did you teach a mindless beast to understand? It is not mindless." Do-hyun glanced back at the creature waiting in the doorway. "It is old and strange and different from anything in this galaxy. But it thinks. It feels. It learns." He looked back at the Empress. Like all predators, it simply needed to meet something that could challenge it. Yuna was silent for a long moment. Then she stepped down from her throne and approached him. "The planet," she said. "I offered you my entire world as payment. Do you expect me to honor that promise?" "No." Do-hyun shook his head. "Humanity does not want territory. We have no interest in ruling worlds that are not ours." "Then, what do you want?" Do-hyun considered the question carefully. Around them, the entire court waited for his answer. Advisors, generals, diplomats. All the powerful people of the Valoran Dominion, hanging on the words of a single aging human. "Respect," he said finally. "Your people look at humans and see something weak, something fragile, something to be dismissed and ignored. You see our short lives and our soft bodies, and you think we are nothing." He reached into his bag and pulled out his worn journal. He held it up for the Empress to see. "This contains everything I know about hunting. Every creature I have faced. Every technique I've learned. Every lesson my ancestors passed down through thousands of years." He pressed it into her hands. "I give it to you as a gift. Study it. Learn from it. And maybe you will begin to understand what humans really are." "And what are you?" Do-hyun smiled. It was the same smile Taiho had worn when this all began. The smile that had made Yuna's laughter die in her throat. "We come from a world where everything tries to kill us. The weather, the animals, the plants. Even our own bodies turn against us as we age." He gestured toward them all, patient and calm in the doorway. We did not survive by being stronger than our predators. We survived by being smarter, more patient, more stubborn. We learned to read them, to understand them, and eventually to tame them. He turned and walked toward the door. At the threshold, he stopped and looked back one final time. You asked what happened when I touched the moss head. You want to know what I did to make it submit. He paused, letting the silence stretch. I did nothing. I simply showed it what I was. A creature that would never stop. Never rest. Never give up. A creature that would chase it across stars and through centuries until one of us was dead. His eyes met Yuna's. That is what humans are, Empress. We are the persistence hunters. The ones who keep coming. The monsters that other monsters learn to fear. He smiled again. Remember that, the next time you think we are nothing. Then he walked out of the throne room. The maw falling into step behind him like a faithful hound. Empress Yuna stood holding his journal, watching them go. The court buzzed with whispered conversations, but she did not hear them. She was thinking about everything she had seen, everything she had learned. She had ruled for 300 cycles. She had commanded fleets and conquered worlds and crushed rebellions. She had thought she understood power, but now, watching a broken old human walk away with a monster at his heels, she realized she had understood nothing at all. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders. Species that could bend reality. Creatures that could eat stars. Technologies that could reshape planets. And somewhere on the edge of it all, on a small blue world orbiting a minor yellow sun, lived a species that had learned to hunt nightmares. She looked down at the journal in her hands. The leather cover was worn soft with years of use. The pages inside were filled with neat handwriting, diagrams, notes in the human language. She would study it, she decided. She would learn everything this human had to teach. And perhaps, in time, she would understand the truth that Doyun had shown her. Power was not about size or strength or technology. Power was about will, about patience, about the refusal to accept defeat. The humans called it stubbornness. They called it persistence. They called it being too stupid to know when to quit. Whatever they called it, Yuna knew she was looking at the most dangerous species in the galaxy. And she was very, very glad they had decided to be friends.